Welcome back to Twisted Tales, where we explore the darker corners of history, the stories that unsettled entire communities and left questions echoing for generations. Tonight, we're stepping into a chilling chapter of crime history, the era of the axe murder. In the 19th century, before electric lights, alarm systems, and modern policing, homes were isolated, nights were darker, rural towns were quieter, and a common household tool could become something far more sinister. These aren't just stories of violence, they're stories of fear, betrayal, desperation, and mystery. Stories that shocked families and towns, and in some cases were never fully explained. Let's begin. Number 10. The Mudgee Tragedy. In 1898, in Mudgee, New South Wales, residents were stunned by news that seemed almost impossible to believe. John McCoy, a retired police constable, stood accused of killing his own wife and infant child. At first, some newspapers questioned whether the report was even true. Surely there had been a mistake. But there wasn't. Neighbors had long suspected tension inside the household. McCoy was known to have a harsh temperament, and his wife had confided fears about her safety. Still, no one imagined things would escalate so tragically. One morning, cries rang out from the house. A young neighbor rushed over and witnessed a scene that would haunt him forever. He ran for help. Authorities arrived to find a devastating scene inside the home. McCoy was apprehended shortly after. During the inquest, he attempted to shift blame, claiming he had suffered mistreatment, a claim witnesses strongly disputed. He was ultimately convicted and sentenced to death. The town struggled not only with the crime itself, but with the warning signs that had gone unheeded. Number 9. Butchered in a Shanty. Spring, 1858. Grand Rapids City, Wisconsin. Inside a small wooden shanty, authorities discovered the body of a woman. The interior told a story of extreme violence. A blood-stained axe lay nearby. Suspicion quickly turned to her husband, Patrick Bennett, who was found close to the scene. He admitted responsibility. Bennett already had a criminal record and was known for heavy drinking, but what led to that night remains unclear. Even more mysterious is what happened afterward. Historical records don't clearly document his final fate. The case became one of those grim reminders of how domestic turmoil, left unresolved, could spiral into tragedy. Number 8. Deadly Wage Dispute. In 1888, Samuel H. Morris and his wife had built a modest life in New South Wales. They hired a worker named Hing Leung. At first, everything appeared normal. But tensions began to rise, possibly over money, possibly over something else entirely. One day, after a confrontation, violence broke out between Morris and Leung. Both men armed themselves with nearby tools. Morris was fatally injured during the altercation. Morris's wife was also attacked, but survived long enough to seek help from neighbors nearly half a mile away. Leung claimed the dispute centered around unpaid wages. Mrs. Morris denied this. Before formal sentencing could take place, Leung died from injuries he sustained during the struggle. A dispute, perhaps over something relatively small, had escalated beyond control. Number 7. The Tall Man. Michigan, 1894. Leroy Rogers, an older bachelor living alone on a farm, was discovered inside his home after a brutal attack. The only lead investigators had? A report of a tall man seen near the property shortly before the crime. Robbery appeared to be a possible motive. Rogers' gun and watch were missing. Yet he wasn't known to have much money. No suspect was ever conclusively identified. The case faded into uncertainty, leaving behind only rumor and fear, especially for those living in rural isolation. Number 6. A considerable mystery. In 1845, neighbors in Parramatta grew uneasy about an older man living with a teenage girl he claimed was his daughter. Speculation spread, but no one intervened. Days later, when there was no sign of movement inside the house, neighbors investigated. What they discovered was horrifying. The girl had been killed. Strangely, there was little evidence at that location. Investigators later found signs of violence in a separate rented home in Sydney, suggesting the crime had occurred elsewhere before the body was moved. The suspect, believed to be named Halloran or O'Halloran, disappeared and was never conclusively tracked down. The case remains an unsettling historical mystery. Number 5. Never pick up a stranger. In 1899, Clay Young met two men at a wagon yard in Oklahoma. They were heading toward Arkansas and agreed to let him travel with them. For a time, the journey was uneventful. But as night fell and the two men slept, Clay made a deadly decision. Motivated by greed, he attacked them. He was captured shortly afterward and confessed without hesitation. What makes this case especially disturbing is how ordinary it began, a simple travel arrangement between strangers. Clay Young was sentenced to life in prison. Number 4. Brained with an axe. Connecticut, 1879. Andrew Manning had a reputation for being abusive toward his wife. His children, desperate to protect their mother, pooled money to persuade him to leave. He did, but he returned, broke and intoxicated. One morning, after appearing calm and even affectionate, he borrowed an axe from a neighbor under false pretenses. Moments later, he carried out a fatal attack on his wife. Overcome by what he had done, or perhaps determined to avoid consequences, Andrew ended his own life shortly afterward. The town buried him quietly. His wife received a full funeral. Number 3. Kept an axe by the bed. Harriet Williams was a hard-working woman in North Carolina. Known for her independence and careful saving habits, she lived alone in a small cabin. One spring morning in 1890, a neighbor heard faint sounds coming from her home. Inside, Harriet had suffered severe injuries during what appeared to be a struggle. 2 axes were found nearby. One she reportedly kept near her bed for protection. Money appeared to be missing, but not all of it. No suspect was ever identified. The case left the community shaken, a reminder that even preparation cannot always prevent tragedy. Number 2. Dreadful murder. Penzance, England, 1846. Benjamin Ellison shared a cottage with Elizabeth Ruth Seaman. One night, instead of returning home, Benjamin stayed at a nearby hotel. The next morning, he claimed someone had broken into the cottage and killed Elizabeth. Authorities discovered her body inside, along with evidence of a violent confrontation. Elizabeth was found clutching hair that appeared to match Benjamin's. He showed signs of having been in a struggle. The jury found him guilty of willful murder. What had unfolded behind closed doors remains known only to the 2 people who were there that night. Number 1. Off the top of his head. Maine, 1874. James P. Davis had previously spent time in a mental institution before being declared cured and released. One morning, his mother found him standing over his father's lifeless body, holding a bloody axe. Calmly, she persuaded her son to put the weapon down and wait inside while she called neighbors. When asked why he had done it, Davis reportedly said, "Washington ordered me to." Whether he meant the government, a vision, or something else entirely was never clarified. The case reignited debates about mental illness, responsibility, and the limits of medical understanding at the time. These stories remind us of a time when isolation, limited law enforcement, and personal turmoil could collide in devastating ways. They're unsettling, not because of the weapon involved, but because of how ordinary many of these lives once seemed. History shows us that darkness doesn't always arrive with warning. Sometimes, it grows quietly behind closed doors. Thank you for spending time with Twisted Tales. If you found this episode thought-provoking, consider following the page for more historical mysteries and true crime stories told with care and respect. And as always, stay aware, stay curious, and take care of one another. Until next time.